I'm going to read to you from Molly Keane's novel, Loving and Giving, her second last. It was first published in 1988, but evokes Anglo-Ireland in the mid-1920s, well beyond the start of its waning years. Molly Keane was an admirer of Jane Austen, but this sardonic novel with its gallery of grotesques reminds me much more of Dostoevsky, with a bit of Gogol thrown in. Molly Keane has a fearsome eye and treats her subject with wit and without a trace of elegy. Her style has a zip absent from translations, even the best ones. I suppose you could call Loving and Giving a Russian novel narrated in the wayward Irish manner. At any rate, the choice is a tribute to the strange resemblance between two countries that I know well. I've even moved the location of the local accent from southeastern Ireland to the part of the west where we have a family property. The tale of the world's most disastrous formal dinner comes from round about the middle of Loving and Giving. The heroine, Nicandra, called by her wispy dada after a favourite horse, an outstanding winner of that name, is desperate to get married, a task that would be easier if her formidable Aunt Tossie, the only one of them with any money, were less perpetually in evidence. Tossie is perfectly dreadful, but you can't fault her energy, even when, as here, it has shockingly scabrous results. I've pruned some of the elaborate plot curlicues, difficult to follow when read aloud, but it survives the horticulture well, I think. I hope you enjoy it as much as me, and do read the rest of the book. It's one of her best. On the morning of the Hunt ball, Aunt Tossie made her descent to the kitchen, where orders for the day were given. Her writing on the slate was that of a child making pothooks and hangers. Mrs. Geary understood it quite well, and disagreed with it often. But today she gave almost pious attention to every scrape of the slate pencil. This dinner they planned must capture the living memory of every lucky guest. Neither she nor Aunt Tossie could foresee that the memory to be implanted would be of a social mishap, a horror that would engross unbelieving attention and sear its recollection like a scar. Aunt Tossie had a faint dribble of desire at the corners of her mouth when, at length, she laid down the slate pencil and rose from her chair to face Mrs. Geary, her companion in what was to be an immortal triumph, its finale that most acceptable of puddings, a really beautiful trifle. "Lay it up, into a glorious round mountain," Aunt Tossie adjured. "Plenty of brandy, and don't plaster the top with cherries. Just one, perhaps on the tip-top." "Holy God!" Mrs. Geary exclaimed, her genius and her dedication alight. In the drawing-room there was none of the untidy, unmatched squalor that made the morning-room a place where troubles could have their breathing spaces. The drawing-room was quite another world. 3 windows had their green blinds perpetually drawn against morning sun or any damage from afternoon light. Their sashes were lifted regularly to air the room and shut again with religious punctuality. There were no stripes of shade down the folds of the yellow brocade curtains. Sheraton and Boule commodes and cabinets, card and console tables, and tiny escritoires by Hepplewhite contrived a harmony. Crowded, but inevitable. The portrait of Nicandra's mother, in court dress and feathers, had not been moved. Saucy and impolite, her gaze was slanted away from proper procedures. To have taken the portrait down would have marked her flight. One did not speak of those things. "Dinner is served, madam," Toomey announced quietly from the doorway. Without a moment's delay, Aunt Tossie got up and sailed down the long room, careless majesty in her gait. 3 glasses of very good sherry had put her right with the world. She felt ageless, and she felt hungry. Alone of them all, she knew how good dinner was going to be. Like a great-breasted pigeon, she preened her feathers along the low corsage of her dress and spread her velvet skirts into perfect order as she sat down. Robert, on her right, cleared his throat and thought for a moment before, looking from the silver basket of white flowers in the middle of the table, he said, "Your Christmas roses are wonderful. My mother's a miserable, all a mass of awful spots. What can she do about it?" Through the first course of clear soup, so strong that it almost jellied in a soup plate, he talked to Aunt Tossie while she supped up her soup delightedly and gave him gardening tips for his mother. Champagne came with the fish. Hours previously, fillets of sole in their bass carrier bag had travelled on the handlebars of Toomey's bicycle. Tamed to perfection, they lay in a discreet miasma of herb-scented butter. Hearing the sound of a cork popping, Aunt Tossie drained her glass in readiness for Toomey's round. For the maintenance of her happy state, more champagne was needed. When Toomey doubtfully filled half her glass, she gave a glance like a whiplash. Madam, 5 to come," he hissed respectfully, his whisper turning into a sigh as he poured the amount required. The slight upwards twist he gave to the bottle took the place of the wry smile he would never allow himself to give. It was with the trifle that the gross and embarrassing incident occurred, the event that Nicandra was to remember, squeamishly and for always. Time passing never softened the impact of that moment when she looked down the table to where Toomey waited for Aunt Tossie to turn her attention to the pudding. Well above the rim of the Waterford glass bowl, the great trifle rose in a stalwart bulge of whipped cream. It was Toomey's appalled stare downwards that concentrated Nicandra's shocked gaze. Aunt Tossie's left breast bulged out, pale against the background of black velvet. Suddenly all saw and all talk stopped. In the persistent silence, only Dada found his voice. He gave an indistinct signal towards the sideboard and a bottle of rather sweeter pudding wine. "Quite nice." He paused before he added, "I think." Then they all talked wildly. Even Nicandra, feeling sick as if she was eating Aunt Tossie, had a question ready for Robert. "Do you know the Froth-Blowers anthem?" When she turned to ask him, she saw that he was blushing painfully. Aunt Tossie's misdemeanour became to her forever more indecent.